Hi everyone, welcome to SIG Autoscaling meeting. Sorry for the last minute confusion on the hour of the meeting. As usual, Europe switching to daylight saving on different date than US, I think may have caught some people off guard. Thanks, Jack, for pinging that on Slack. I actually completely forgot about that. Yeah, so the first item on the agenda is from Marco around VPA V1 Beta 2 API. However, I don't see him on the meeting. Oh, actually, you're here. Hi. So do you want to take it?
Yes, thanks. Sorry, I joined like 1-2 minutes late. So yeah, I think Joachim opened an item like more than a year back, I guess, to when he deprecated the V1 Beta 2 API in VPA. And now it's even more than 3 releases later. So the idea is to like finally remove this stuff and then release the next version with only V1 support and document in the README like the exact versions that this VPA version will run with. I think it might be 129, depending on when people actually switched away from using that API. I mean, there's no VPA like directly in Kubernetes core, so it may even be that you can use parts with newer Kubernetes versions, or like even with like the new version with older Kubernetes versions. But yeah, I think the proposal is to like finally remove this. I'm not sure if there is like a good reason to keep this stuff.
I guess my question would be on the migration path for anyone already using the old API. I know how this is handled for the call types in Kubernetes, but actually I'm not sure if there is some sort of automated support for CRDs.
I don't know, to be honest.
Yeah, I think it would be good to look into this. Is there something we can do to just make the transition easier for the users? I remember at some point we dropped, I think, some very old version of HPA, and that was back in like 2018 or 20 something like this.
Mhm.
And that caused issues where basically some Kubernetes clusters had HPA in a version that was no longer supported, stored in API server, and that just crashed ability to read any HPAs. I'm pretty sure we moved a lot from then as API machinery, and I wouldn't expect an issue like this. But it's interesting question. What happens if you have old VPA objects? Will they be automatically migrated? I know for call types that will work that way nowadays. I just don't know for CRDs.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah, I can check what happens and see if there is something we can, like if it doesn't happen automatically, if there's something we can do. Okay, yeah, that's a very good point. Thanks.
Sure, thanks. Anyone else has any thoughts on this removal of the API? Seems like we're good to move to the next topic, which is the same topic we discussed last week. Actually, I wonder if we maybe want to handle this one later, because I think this may be a longer discussion again. So if the other topics are quick, maybe we can just quickly mention them and come back to vertical scaling, if this is okay.
Okay. Yeah, short discussion is okay.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
So the next one is about a review for AWS provider and cluster autoscaler.
Yeah. I was just looking for a review. I was waiting a couple weeks for that. If there's any AWS reviewers in the call, I just wanted a review for that.
Yeah, I don't see any AWS reviewers on call. Unfortunately, as usual, we're short-staffed on AWS reviewers. If anyone would like to step up to take that role, sort of, I'm sure that would help us. Yeah, I'm happy to try to ping them on Slack, but like otherwise, I'm not sure what I can do to help.
Okay, thanks.
Sure. Okay, and the final item is from you, Jack, about the KubeCon talk.
Yeah, can I share screen? Do I need host key or will I be able to do this? Let me see. I'll just try.
Sure.
Okay. So I'm going to show, I have not completed this slide by any means, but I have a proposed outline for how it's going to look. And then it should probably only take me a day to get a draft in place. So yeah, hopefully some of us will be going to KubeCon besides just myself in November, Salt Lake City. If you're there, please hit me up on Slack and we can meet up. But I'm going to be giving the talk for SIG Autoscaling. These are 30-minute talks. In a kind of best case scenario, it's sort of 15 minutes project overview, status update, and then 15 minutes of audience Q&A. So I'm going to try to tune this so it's a fairly brief slide deck and get through it quick. So if there are questions, we have time. But this is the agenda that I've laid out that I would love to get feedback from this community, and I'm going to be pinging other folks. If there's something missing, please let me know. As you can see, there's no HPA or VPA section here. So if that's not right, super happy to accommodate that. From my view, it seems like I pay attention more to cluster autoscaler, so it's easier for me to imagine how to write that content. But for folks who are paying more attention to HPA or VPA, if we've had a lot of changes or interesting stuff happen in the last year, we can create a separate section for that. And as I noted in the agenda doc, this is currently private. Maciek, you already asked for access. Thanks for doing that. So if you want to review this, or I'm happy to give you edit access, just hit me up. But mainly a call out. This will be happening this week. So if you have any ideas about what should go into this slide and what should go into the talk, please let me know. Hey, Mike.
Hey Jack, thanks for doing this talk for SIG Autoscaler. I said this in chat, but I was just curious, like, is there enough advancement, or is it worth doing an update on the status of the multi-dimensional pod autoscaler? I know that was like a hot.
Yeah, I think there's plenty of time. I know
Right,
for
cool.
some normal people this might seem like procrastinating, but I'm comfortable procrastinating. So we could take this up to the 11th hour if we need to. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I was more saying like, has there been enough advancement on the MPA or MDPA, whatever we're calling it? Because I kind of lost touch with that, but I thought it had been going really well, and it seemed like there was a lot of interest in it. So,
Have any thoughts on that, Maciek? That seems like a 2023 thing. Not it like kind of stalled in 2024. Anybody have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think
Maybe
you're right. I haven't seen like any progress on that, like in the recent months.
Marco, have you been tracking that? I know that you're.
Yeah, I mean, I've been trying to keep an eye on it. It's not like I've been actively pinging for like, hey, what's the state on this or anything, but nothing happened basically on the current state of the PR, right?
Right. So is the status? It's still in CAP status. It hasn't been implemented yet.
I think this was at some point in time like a very huge PR, and people were asking to like split it up into like more parts to make it easier to review and more digestible chunks and so on. And at some point the discussion just stopped, and it seemed like the authors may have lost interest a bit. yeah, that's my impression. But as I
Right,
said,
so
I have not been like pinging actively for
I had thought Chen or someone had like demonstrated this. Like I thought there was a POC out there somewhere, but yeah, I guess I had lost touch with it too.
yeah, I'll try, as someone who was watching sort of just peripherally, I'll try to summarize if folks are unfamiliar with what we're talking about. So there was a proposal, I seem to recall, I'm going to say 2 years ago or something like that, for essentially combining VPA and HPA into a single resource type for, better ergonomics for defining more sophisticated pod scaling. So that became known as multi-dimensional pod autoscaling. So multi fill in both the H and the V of the current state of the world. And yeah, my recollection is that there was a lot of good conversation in the like 128 era or something like that. And it seemed like there was consensus on a path forward, but I haven't heard anything in the last few release cycles. So that's a good call out, Mike. I'll do a little bit of research and just reach out to the stakeholders there and let them know that I'm giving this talk. I think the KEP spans more than just SIG Autoscaling, so I don't want to. Cool. That's a great call out. So I'll do that work today. See if there's a story there we can tell on their behalf.
Thanks, Jack. Yeah, it was just one of those things. I remember people asked me about it, like a lot of questions about it, like 6 months ago, and then I haven't heard a lot since then. So yeah.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of good suggestions on chat. I think you've already noticed them, but it seems like lots of good ideas.
Yeah, so I think Adrian's comment specifically about like in-place edit, like in-place resource resizing would be probably a very important thing. I'm not sure. This seems to be mostly driven by SIG Node, I guess. But I'm not sure if people would come to a SIG Autoscaling talk and also expect some ideas about like what's the state there.
I imagine there might be questions about that, just because I've seen a few on Slack and on the GitHub issues.
Okay, cool. So what I'll try to do is I'm going to take a snapshot of this chat before the meeting ends so I don't lose it. All of this, and basically anything can fit into this current outline fairly easily. And then we can discuss. I'll be pinging a bunch of you folks with if it deserves its own sort of feature slide or if it's in the future work section or something like that.
Yeah,
because I think a successful version of this talk, in my experience, is you don't want to go into too much boring detail where you take the 30 minutes just going line item, like this is every PR we landed, or this is every KEP that touches SIG Autoscaling. Hopefully we can be sensitive to folks who might be new to Kubernetes and new to SIG Autoscaling and give them some time to digest at a high level and maybe participate in the talk.
And I haven't been in one of these, but I feel like it's the type of talk where getting questions is actually a good thing because you kind of get to answer specific things that people on top of people's minds. So like keep it light at the beginning and then have Q&A kind of thing.
Yeah, and also I think Mike, I look forward to being heckled. Bring your good stuff. I think a really important thing is to make the content, present the community in a way where that last bullet point where you can help, like one of the biggest values of these talks is, recruitment, like getting folks who are there kind of walking the halls, looking for something to get involved in. You want to be a community that's welcoming. And so cool. Thanks. Just bug me this week. Most of this is going to be populated this week. So.
All right, thanks. Sounds good. So I think we can get back to the last topic we have remaining, the vertical scaling, which we started last week but haven't been able to finish. Do you want to take it over, Jean?
Are you talking because we?
Yeah. Sorry. Can you see my screen? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would like to continue to discuss vertical device steering. And Jack Francis proposed the idea for vertical steering. So I explain this idea first. He proposed a new annotation, dynamic headroom, and if node has this annotation, node group is deemed as not safety. So cluster autoscaler can skip this node group for the vertical steering. So that is his proposal. So yeah, I'm appreciate. But I want to horizontally scale nodes by cluster autoscaler even for node group for vertical scaling. And for example, I assume the following cases. The first one is if all nodes in a node group already have the maximum number of GPUs attached, we cannot add more GPUs without adding a new node. So in that case, only vertical scaling is not enough. We need to consider both of horizontal scaling and vertical scaling. And the second case is if pod is using CPU and memory as well as GPU, and the nodes are running out of CPU and memory, in this case, we need to add more nodes. So I imagine these cases. And if we use Jack Francis' idea, in this case, we must temporarily remove the nodes annotation, dynamic headroom, in order to add more nodes by cluster autoscaler. As a result, cluster autoscaler must allow nodes with different specifications to exist in a node group. So this may be a problem. And my original idea was as follows. My idea, there is a process to get node info for each node group, and specifically, I think there is a process function. And in this process function, in the case of node groups for vertical scale, I wanted to improve this function to get the maximum size of GPUs that can be attached to a node. As a result, cluster autoscaler can add more nodes even if the nodes in the node group have different specifications. And in the last meeting, I proposed that to state the maximum number of GPUs in annotation in machine set. But this is for cluster API. So I would like to consult this idea is acceptable or not. I would like to hear your comment, opinion. Yeah, that's it from me.
So just to be clear, this WIP PR is something that I put up for demonstration purposes. This is like 15 minutes after last week's meeting.
Yeah.
What I was trying to demonstrate is, at least what I was able to come up with in those 15 minutes, the lightest touch way to evolve the cluster autoscaler code. So by simply making a new sort of standard annotation that cluster autoscaler can then use to sort of short circuit the scale out functionality. That was, at least again for me, couldn't think of any easier way to do it from cluster autoscaler's perspective. But that requires all the business logic and all the interesting introspection to some other actor will do that. So I was imagining some operator somewhere would be responsible for understanding the state of the environmental hardware capabilities that the cluster is operating in. And based on its investigation into the underlying infrastructure and how many more GPU nodes can be made available if need be, that other actor would be continually publishing this new standard annotation data to the node objects that cluster autoscaler could then just simply consume and trust that, like, oh, this annotation is here, I'm going to go ahead and not consider this node group for scale out because I know that this means that there's more underlying infrastructure here for vertical scale out. So that's really the extent of this change. Did that make sense, my explanation?
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead, Maciek.
Oh,
So I think you don't need just to skip a particular node group for scale out, though. You need to skip any scale up for a set of pods that can schedule on the nodes that can be resized, right? So you basically would need to block all the scaling in cluster autoscaler until you have resized all of your VMs as much as you can, and then essentially resume creating new nodes, which I guess could work. It's just going to add a bunch of latency. Or the alternative is to have some sort of heuristic in cluster autoscaler, which maybe results in overshooting scale up, and then we need to go down. So either kind of risk undershooting or overshooting, I guess, right? If you split, at least temporarily, because it should be eventually consistent either way.
okay.
And the other thing to keep in mind is that the DRA implementations are going to be arriving shortly, and those may offer good enough standard behaviors for these use cases. Because one of the key things for DRA is to economize scheduling of GPUs across nodes, so you can shard GPUs into like MIG devices and better make those available for multi-tenant scheduling. So it's possible that the density advantages that DRA will offer in cluster autoscaler is good enough for your use case. Anyway, I think you're going to say something, Jen. Go ahead.
Okay, yeah, DRA is related to this idea. Current understanding, DRA, the scope is GPU has been already attached in the node. I think current DRA scope is this. Current DRA does not manage the outside of cluster. So I think DRA is related to this idea, but current DRA does not support vertical scaling yet. So I need to discuss device management working group, I think, but yeah, I need to consider DRA functionality.
So I have a question. If I remember correctly from the like last week's meeting, the idea for scaling those nodes was to, if there's an existing node, there will be some external controller that basically intercepts cluster autoscaler scale up decision and makes something else, like scales an existing node instead of adding a new one. How do you, like, is this and I think that may lead to some problems. For example, if you have affinities on the pods that were simulated in cluster autoscaler, they may be fine to run on a new node, but not necessarily on an existing node. Is that something that you're explicitly like saying is not supported, or do you have some idea of how to handle those cases?
So I need to consider that case. Currently, I am considering following 4 cases. So I'd like to consider your case.
So I think this approach of like anticipating, not intercepting the scale up decisions is going to be tricky, and you need to re-implement some of the cluster autoscaler logic to verify that it indeed makes sense to resize an existing node. And if that's the case, maybe there's some other way of integrating that. But I don't have a ready answer, just yeah. Just mentioning it as a potential problem.
Building on top of what Daniel just said, like, would it be possible, at least for growing the cluster, would it be possible to do this type of calculation in an expander? Like, could you use the gRPC expander methodology to have an understanding of like what's happening in the cluster to make some of these calculations when you're doing the expansion? I just, that seems like a natural plug-in point for some of these type of calculations.
Yeah, I have not considered yet regarding expander or how to communicate.
Expander happens pretty late in autoscaler cycle after the bin packing, but I guess it is possible to reduce size of scale up, but you'd have to essentially redo bin packing in your separate controller. But maybe there are other extension points like processors in earlier in CA loop that could also be helpful here. Though those don't have gRPC support yet. I also wrote some ideas around DRA, like maybe we could have essentially DRA objects that represent non-existing GPUs, and then have scheduler kind of create them in the binding. This would be similar approach to how PVs and PVCs work, right? Where you have dynamic persistent volume provisioning. I'm not sure if this would work, but maybe that's an idea to explore.
Okay. Regarding expander, I have a question. Can we use expander regarding deletion case?
So expander is specifically an interface used to pick which scale out to do. So it's not involved in deletion.
Okay, I understand.
But again, there are other processors that can control deletion to a large extent. Those are not available via gRPC, but I think expander wasn't available via gRPC until someone needed it and added that support. So this is an option to also support other extension points via gRPC potentially. Yeah, I see Daniel dropped already, and we're almost 5 minutes past the time. So I think it seems like we may need another follow-up, right? There is a lot of different ideas. I'm not sure if we want to discuss it on next SIG meeting, or if there is some issue where we want to continue the discussion offline, or at least do a round of discussion and then come back to like maybe meet again after we have explored some ideas.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, in that case, let's maybe try to coordinate on the Slack or the agenda doc and decide for next week if we want to continue the discussion. I'll also try to make sure Kuba, who's working on DRA implementation, is also on the meeting, as I think he may have some thoughts that seems quite related, and I think he's quite deep in DRA. And so maybe he would have some ideas.
By the way, DRA means structured parameters, not classic DRA.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I think there is no plan to support classic DRA in autoscaling, as we need a certain level of predictability, which there is essentially no predictability in classic DRA.
Classic
And
theory is being deprecated anyway, so we don't have the option.
Okay, I understand.
Yeah, I believe the motivation, a large part of motivation behind structured parameters was to make it easier to support with autoscaling.
Okay, I see. Okay, today that's it from me. Thank you.
Okay, in that case, thank you everyone, and have a good week, and let's see each other next week. Bye.
Bye.